When we got married 38 years ago, we were in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, both of us making about $1 an hour over minimum wage. As we learned to live within our means, one of the things we discovered was that it was not so much our income that was holding us back, it was all the things that we kept saying about money. There are 11 things that you should never say about money.
The first thing that we would say to ourselves was, we're stuck. And this usually happened when we were paying bills and then something unexpected would happen. Maybe something in the vehicles would break down, or maybe the washing machine would break down. There would be some unexpected expense we'd have to go for that would cause us to be spending more than what we had budgeted for that month. And so instead of looking ahead and looking down the road, we would just simply say, we're stuck. But that keeps you from looking for solutions that would get you unstuck. And a lot of those solutions have to do with doing little things that will build money back into your savings.
One of the things that you can do right now, if you're watching and you feel like I'm stuck, is to ask yourself a really important question. What is one thing that I can do differently or I can change in the next 30 days? Write it down and then follow through. Once you've got that under your belt, there are a whole lot more questions that will occur to you that will keep you moving in the right direction.
The second thing that we've said to ourselves is that I've cut back as much as I can. Now, it might look like that on paper, but if you look very closely at what you're doing, you might see it differently.
I was notorious for uttering that statement. Larry's like, so what can we do differently? I'm like, I don't know. I've cut the budget as much as I can. There's no fat on there. You're not going to find it. One thing that he did that was really important was to say, get the budget. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to find a way to cut just 10% off of each category. Here's why that was important, because 10% seems doable. If he had said cut it 50%, I went, no, and then the budget never would have even come out of the drawer. So start small. Do something to cut back. Make a list, once again, of habits that you're willing to follow through with. Then you're going to track those habits. And at the end of that 30-day period, you're going to evaluate, did it move the needle? Did it work? Did it help me to save money? If it did, you know what you're going to do the next 30 days after that? You're going to double down on what you just did. If it didn't move the needle or it didn't move it as much as you had hoped it would, you're going to ask yourself, what else can I do? All those years ago, that's when our 10% challenge came into being. And it worked so well for us that we continue to do the 10% challenge on a regular basis to this day. If you're ready to cut expenses and you're thinking, I don't understand, where am I supposed to look? What am I supposed to do? I wrote a guide for you. It's 10 ways to radically reduce your expenses. It's all of the areas of our budget that we cut back on when we were reaching for some really great big financial goals on a low income. The guide's free. I'll make sure that I leave a link in the video description.
Here's one we've been hearing a lot, and that is, I don't make enough money to budget. Now, that doesn't matter if you make, say, $2,000 a month or $20,000 a month. You need to be able to budget so you know where your money is being spent and how much of that money is available from your savings or from your plan in order to spend it correctly. It doesn't really matter how much you make. In fact, really, if you're making a small amount of money, it's even more important for you to budget than if you make a lot amount of money.
But lest you think we're telling you, oh, it's easy to make it on a small amount of income. No, we're not saying that at all. We did it for a very, very, very long time. And there were a lot of times when it simply wasn't that much fun. You do begin to feel like you don't have as many options. But when you make a smaller amount of money, the truth is, giving every dollar a job to do is that much more important. This next one we have heard a lot, and I'll be honest with you, it kind of burns my biscuits. It's out of my control. I can't control anything that's happening around me, therefore I cannot control my money. there's a lot of things in life that are outside of your control.
Yeah.
You can't control grocery prices. You can't control the housing market. You can't control government policy. You can't control the cost of automobiles. You can't control inflation. Look, you're right. That is out of your control. But you have to get to the point where you're willing to focus on what is within your control. Stuff comes, stuff goes. There's always going to be challenges, shall we say. There are people who remember going through the oil embargo in the 1970s.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, early 80s, they remember that there were mortgage interest rates that were well into the double digits. They remember the housing crisis in the 2000s. You remember the housing crisis? Look, we've gone through a lot of different things. The truth is money is cyclical. So you're going to have some down times and you're going to have some times where money is a little bit more available. You can't let those down times dictate you into a corner where you say, I just can't do a thing. So instead of asking, whose fault is this? You need to ask, what is my next step? Because that's the first step in the right direction. This next one is something that I think trips all of us up a time or two. It's only $20.
Yeah, it's only $20.
Or it's only $10, or it's only $2. One of the things we discovered when we were saving toward our paying cash for our current home was that we were spending a lot of money without really thinking about it. What happens, and we're huge proponents of, like, for instance, putting cash in a cash envelope and paying for groceries out of a cash envelope if you're having trouble meeting your grocery budget. It's a great way to do it. But when you have money that's just sitting in your wallet, that's where the problem is. Because you'll go to, say, a garage sale or a secondhand store, or you'll stop at the grocery store and think, well, I've got the money in my wallet, so I may as well spend it. And there's no paper trail unless you look at the receipt. There's nothing to tell you, I just spent $20 or I just spent $40. It adds up far more quickly than you might imagine that it does.
You notice you never say it's only $500.
That's fair.
But if you say it's only $20 enough times, then that can eventually add up to $500 that you've actually removed from your budget, let's say in a period of 3 months. So every little thing that you do with your money should be budgeted for and should be planned. So if you go to a garage sale, have a list of items that you're looking for and stick to that list. And if it's not on the list, don't buy it.
Our friend Julie calls this her Keofi list. Keep an eye out for it.
Oh,
I call it
good.
Keofi. I don't know if she uses the letters or what when she talks about it, but it's a Keofi list.
That's great.
So we have adopted that saying, oh, do you have the Keofi list? Because that tells us these are things we're keeping an eye out for.
Oftentimes, we've worked hard, we've done a good job, maybe we've done some things on our job and we've even won an award. So we might say, I deserve to spend this money on myself. I did that one time when my employer handed out some extra $100 bills and taped them to our computers. And they said, because you guys have done so well, we're going to give everybody an extra $100. Well, we took that money and went out and bought a color TV with that amount of money. Instead of saying, do I deserve it? Or have we really planned? Once again, it gets back to planning. Have I planned for this item and have I budgeted? So if you just keep going to the store and say, I deserve this, or you go out to eat and say, we deserve to go out to eat, you're going to end up spending money that you don't have.
This is like the kissing cousin to the one that Larry just said, and that is, it's on sale. We're notorious for going to places and going, oh, look, it's 30% off. It's 85% off. Look, if you buy something that's 85% off, did you get a great deal? Probably, but did you need it? You still spent money. And that's the problem with sales, is the fact that, especially BOGOs, buy one, get one free.
Oh,
Can I get an amen? That's like, I am a sucker for a BOGO sale. I really, truly am. You have to look at it like emotionless, right? You have to be able to look at that item and instead of being emotionally invested in the verbiage that company is using to try to get you to buy something, you have to distance yourself from it and say, wait a minute, whoa. Is this something I need? does this fit into my budget? Do I have money saved for it? How is this going to affect my financial goals? And once you take a beat and you think it through, sometimes you might go, you know what? It's on my KOF list. Yeah, I'm going to buy it. Or you might say, and you know what? I'm passing, because spending money is still spending money. Even if you're saving money, you're still spending it.
This next one upsets Hope just a little bit.
I don't need a system. People sometimes don't put it in those words. They may say, I don't want to plan meals. I don't want to have a grocery list. I don't want to write down all my expenses. I don't want to figure out what habits I'm using that are costing me money on my utility bill. Those are all systems. I've even had people write me lengthy 4 or 5 paragraph letters saying, please stop doing what you're doing. Here's the truth. Systems saved us financially. When we were in debt and trying to really honestly figure out how to make it from one paycheck to the next, the first thing we did was start planning some systems and putting them into place, because the systems provide the guardrails. Planning meals every month, tracking what I'm spending on groceries, knowing what I have in my pantry, planning our weekly budget meeting. Yeah. Those are all examples of systems that we use. They're very simple. They don't take us a lot of time, and they're very repeatable.
And those routines didn't make us feel restricted. Mm-hmm. They actually gave us a lot of freedom. They reduced the stress. They took out the mystery about what we had to work with. We knew exactly how to plan. We knew how much money we had for certain items. We knew how much we had left in our budget and what we needed to do to get to where we wanted to go to meet our goals. So this was a great way for us to help us out with our budgeting.
We would challenge you with this. So instead of saying, I don't need a system, instead say, I need a system that is simple enough that I will continue using it. Because any system in and of itself, they're right, absolutely will not work. It is consistency over time, repeating the system. Yeah. That's what works.
This one we've often heard from other people, and they'll say, if I just made more money. Well, chances are you could make more money, but if you're not budgeting carefully, you're still going to spend more money. You're going to spend what comes in. And we have seen families that do this. They make maybe 2 or 3 times what Hope and I were making, and they had nothing to show for it because they were simply spending it as fast as they were making it. So making more money is not the answer.
That's a good example of lifestyle inflation. When you get a raise, you spend the raise. And you keep doing that so that you never get any further ahead than you were in the first place. More money is not going to change your financial habits. Instead of saying, if I just had more money, what you might ask yourself is, how can I be a better manager of the money that I do have?
Another simple excuse would be, I only buy what I need. This is a case where everything you buy could look like a need, but is it really a need? Is it something you've planned for and you can't live without? Chances are you're probably going to be buying some things within that saying that you really don't need.
Here's an example of what this statement would probably look like in everyday living. If you ask someone, what do you spend on groceries? Their response might be, I spend what I need to spend. That's a derivation of this exact same thing we're talking about. And what that generally means is they're not tracking how much they're spending on groceries. And if they did track it for 30 days, it will probably be a much higher amount than they thought that it was. We call that guesstimating. And here is why that is kind of a not real good thing to do when it comes to your finances. Because if you're guesstimating about something, it means that you don't know what's going out. And so you don't have a target to aim for. So when you know we have a family of 4, we're spending $1,500 a month on groceries, then you can say, what is 10% less? $150 less than that. $1,350. You're going to cut it back by 10%. We use the 10% model, the stair-step model, for nearly everything. You're going to cut back 10%, make sure that works, and in the 30 days, you're going to cut back another 10%. So when you tackle this whole thing that you're telling yourself of, yeah, I don't really need to track anything, that's your first step, is to figure out exactly how much you are spending in that area and then create a goal and follow through with it.
This next one is a real killer, and that's budgeting won't work for me. Now, chances are you've tried to budget. Let's say you got it on a budget and you worked with it for about a week and then you just gave up because things weren't working very well. But I want to tell you, budgeting is never 100%. There's always something that's going to give and take in a budget to make it a little bit different than what you had planned on. So you have to plan for things that are going to happen unexpectedly and be okay with it when those things happen. And don't give up. Keep on it. Keep working with it. It will benefit you in the long run if you can stick with it.
Okay, here's the question. Have we had months when our budget simply did not work?
Oh, yeah, we have. Oh, yeah.
Of course we have.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of times when life gets lifey,
Yeah.
and it didn't go the way that we had expected that it would. But you can't let that derail you from believing in your heart that the process doesn't work, because it does work. Now, when you first start budgeting, we tell people it takes 3 or 4 months to kind of figure out the ebbs and flows. But what you do get the hang of is knowing where those areas of your budget are that have some give and take, so that when something is extra high one month, this just happened to us, our grocery budget, I went over. So we know exactly where we're going to go in the budget to either grab a little extra money, or we know, most importantly, that process that we're going to use, the grocery system that we have used for decades. We go back and say, wait a minute, where did we mess up in that system? What did we not follow that is our own pattern, our own rule? And we figured that out. And we're like, okay, so here's exactly what we need to do in order to get back on track. So you don't have to fall off the budget wagon. You just have to realize that the wagon has kind of taken a little sideways step. You flow with it, you stay on the wagon, and you figure out how to course correct.
The families who succeed in budgeting aren't the ones that do perfectly every month. We all make mistakes, and sometimes it's not really mistakes, it's just things that commonly happen because a budget isn't 100% fixed. So you have to allow yourself for adjustments and allow for some time to make some changes that will help it work in the long run.
Some of these statements that we're talking about, some of these are statements that relate to large budget categories. Some of them are statements that relate to smaller budget categories. Some of these require large habit changes, and some require smaller habit changes. Never ever think to yourself that making small changes is not going to make a difference, because it does over time. Now, if you want to know more about the simple, repeatable systems that we use, we did a whole video on it, and it's right over there.